Good morning, KOTA territory. This is Jack Siebold with another of the Beyond the Soundbite segments that we are starting to use a live stream news system for. We did a story, Juliana Alford, last Friday, October 27, about a Federal Railroad Administration study about rejuvenating America's passenger rail service, which has been dismal in some places, and in places like South Dakota, downright absent. The study is actually taking a look at existing lines that they want to improve. Also, they are looking at going to possibly bring back some old Amtrak lines that have been abandoned. In South Dakota for South Dakota, there were no lines that were abandoned. South Dakota doesn't have any rail service, has not had passenger. When I say rail service, I'm specifically talking about passenger service. Yes, we do have freight, but rail service for passengers we have not had in this state since 1969, which is a year before when Amtrak actually began. And that's one of the reasons why Amtrak has not had a presence in South Dakota, because we didn't have any passenger rail service in the first place, so there was nothing for them to pick up. Now, while they're talking about working on the rail service, there's a problem here with South Dakota. We're not on the list. We're not on the list. We're not on the route, any potential routes. And that's where a man named Dan Bilka with All Aboard Northwest. It's an advocacy group that's trying to help pump up the Northwest area for rail service. And Juliana Alford did an interview with him last Friday. And I'm going to let you hear Dan talk about this himself, okay?
I'm with All Aboard Northwest, however, which is a region-wide advocacy organization focused on the greater Northwest region of the United States, which is roughly the western Great Lakes of the Pacific Northwest, I-70 corridor to Canada. The federal study is one that has been directed by Congress. Congress has directed the Federal Railroad Administration to study not only former Amtrak daily long-distance routes like the North Coast Hiawatha that went through Bismarck and southern Montana, but also the potential for new Amtrak long-distance routes as well. And that's where we're advocating to get South Dakota on the map, and Rapid City in particular. With this being such a large regional hub out here, and how much of a drawn area that you have, and that really wanting to make sure to build the connections there for people to get to where they want to go, not only here to Rapid City from around the region, but also from Rapid City to Sioux Falls, to Denver, to the Twin Cities, wherever it might be. That way they're only looking at where there's existing rail infrastructure, such as the RCP line or the Badlands route that way, are the different opportunities that they'd have to look at getting passenger rail service here. They would utilize existing railway rights-of-way that way and have to probably upgrade the tracks there for modern passenger rail standards, which is greater than what freight rail standards are. With it, the federal study will be due to Congress next spring there, and then it'll be on to Congress to decide what happens at that point. And we want to advocate for them not to just sort of sit on the study as has happened in the past, but actually really move it forward there. Ideally, we'd like to see stuff happen in a shorter time frame than what historically has happened, but it can be a couple years for a study to go through the analysis there and do the service development plan and then do the construction projects there in order to be able to implement service. With it, it would be a couple years before passenger rail service would start there, up to potentially 10 years, but I cannot give you a ballpark on that. That would be the service planning stuff. The most critical thing about the study is to simply get the route on the map that way as a designated federal route. Passenger rail is ideal for what we call the 3 E's with All Aboard Northwest: for environmental benefits, for equity benefits, and economic benefits. In that these quote-unquote long-distance routes bring many times the rate of return on taxpayers' equity for the communities that it serves, such as an empire builder brings over 10 times the rate of return to the communities that it serves compared to the money that's used to create or run the route. That if people have any inkling of interest that way, to go onto the federal project website, fralongdistancestudy.org, and submit your comments that way and showcase to the federal team there and also to the congressional delegation that we want to be on the map with passenger rail service.
Okay, that was Dan Bilka of All Aboard Northwest. A little history on on rail service in South Dakota. We checked the government historical site, and not only did we find out that the last passenger rail train was 1969. Honestly, you can't consider the 1880 train from Hill City to Keystone as a passenger train, even though it does carry passengers. That's a tourist thing. Now, South Dakota used to have 4,400 miles of rails. Now it's only 1,700. And if you listen to Dan Bilka, he was talking about there's only two lines that they could actually, two lines they could actually work on. And that's the one from Rapid City through the Badlands, and I forgot the other one that he was just talking about. Now, in the 1950s, the U.S. culture changed quite a bit. Rail travel was the dominant way Americans moved across the country, especially during World War II. But in the 1950s, air travel started picking up. The interstate. Came into existence, and it was a lot more convenient and, to be honest, sometimes cheaper to just drive than it was to take the train. So that's what happened in the 50s, and then the 60s and the 70s is when a lot of the companies, rail passenger service as well as freight service, started to drop lines. 60% of the state's rails were abandoned in the 60s and the 1970s. So that's where we are. The study, it will take some years to do, and it will take even if South Dakota does get the nod to go ahead with a passenger service, it will take probably a decade to get there. But we will continue to follow this story. For now, that's about it with another Beyond the Soundbite. Bye.